I'm Rachel Alday, and this is the Hospitality Breakroom, a podcast full of nuggets and secret sauce, where every Monday we'll shed light on what we've learned from the countless mistakes we've made along our journey in the chaotic and rewarding world of vacation rentals. Hi, and welcome back to the Hospitality Breakroom. This is officially our second episode, and this time we have a guest with us. It's Linny. Linny is part of two people that are Tandemly, which is a consulting company that we at Abode Luxury Rentals started working with 5 years ago.
Yep, about 5 years ago.
And Linny and Hart both have done so much work with our team. It's been monumental. And so Linny and I are going to talk today about the work we've done together and how we got from where we started to where we are now. Okay. So Linny, do you want to give a little background?
Sure. Hi, I'm Linny Jones. I am one half of Tandemly, as Rachel mentioned. My better professional half, Hart Logan, is unfortunately not here today. We're a management consulting firm, and we help companies as they scale. So, it doesn't have to be necessarily venture backed or tech. We have loved working with Bode. It's been a very fun journey for us to try out all of our secret sauce with you all and just see the growth that's happened.
Yeah. So I talk about Tandemly and Linny and Hart constantly, like to everyone I know and everyone that I meet, including our homeowners and guests, and anytime that I'm on a podcast. And I think that's because my husband Rob and I, we know that, we got to a certain point with our company and we knew that we were really lucky to have the team that we had and have like an amazing company culture sort of by accident. But we had no idea how we got there, and we knew we had no idea how to keep it going. And so that is when we reached out and wanted to find a consultant. And really, it's because we read this book called Tribal Leadership, which is
Right there.
right
Right there.
It's right here.
Yeah.
Tribal Leadership. And it's this book that we read after we heard about the book in another book that's probably here, Delivering Happiness from Tony Hsieh. And anyway, Tribal Leadership was like such a big deal for me when I read it. And then when Rob read it, that like a little bit of a psycho, I tried to reach out to the authors of the book. And one of the authors is Dave Logan. And I ended up getting a hold of Linny because at the time, Linny was working for like a consulting group that the authors of Tribal Leadership had put together. And so I ended up talking to Linny and then working with Hart. And Hart is one of the authors, Dave Logan. Hart is his wife. And so that's how that's how Rob and I ended up finding Linny and Hart. And we really didn't know what we were getting into because we'd never worked with any consultants before. But it ended up being like the best thing ever. And I think we first reached out right before COVID.
It was right before COVID. You reached out. You were like, hey, can you do this training for, and for those of you who don't know, tribal leadership actually describes the culture stages of a company. So when you're looking at your own organization, people are in different stages.
Mhm.
And so it's a really good read. And I think it's really helpful. And it was helpful for you and
It was
your team.
life-changing
Yeah.
for me. Like some of the nuggets that I got from Tribal Leadership, like my favorite one is it was talking about like being in, so there's the 5 stages, right? So like stage 2 or 3, maybe you can remind me, was when it's like when you feel like your company's really good, but everyone else is kind of a problem, sort of. So I was like very consumed with the idea of our competitors and that we had to like be better and like not that I wanted to like attack our competitors, but just like I was feeling negative towards our competitors,
Sure.
which was not enjoyable for me. And I really didn't know what to do with that until I read this book. And then it was talking about, I think, is that stage 2?
So stage 2 is my life sucks. So you see other people out there that are having a good time and a good life. But we always use the TSA PreCheck as the example.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're in those itchy uniforms and they're watching people with rollerboards go off on vacation or fun business trips.
Yeah.
And so like there are going to be people at your organization that have that attitude.
Yeah.
Like my life sucks, but other people there are great. And then stage 3 is I'm great, but everybody else kind of sucks.
So I think it was like stage 3-ish, like this, but I was too in it.
Yeah.
And so I just remember reading Tribal Leadership and realizing like, wow, I need to be focusing on our company and on us. And I don't need to be having these like negative feelings about our competitors. I guess before reading the book, I sort of thought it was helpful for me to have like a healthy competitive feeling with my, peers in the industry. But I was taking it somewhere negative, and then Tribal Leadership, and I'm not doing a good job explaining how that
you're
worked,
doing
but
great.
for me, when I read it, it was like the eye-opening moment of like, I don't need to be concerned with my competitors. I don't need to see them negatively. I need to be competing with myself. Like we need to be focused on what we're doing. And it was a huge shift for me. And it was really that shift that again, I don't feel like I'm making it sound as impactful as it was for me, but it was. And that it was that made me want to reach out to the author of the book and figure out like, okay, I'm having this shift within myself that's like helping me realize that I need to be more positive overall within my own company and also outside of it. And I wanted to be able to like teach that to my team.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, so tangent as always, but so that's how Linny and I met in Heart 2. And then that started our journey into working together to sort of number one, excavate what was so good about this team that we had. How did we get that team? And how could we keep that team happy and continue to get more team members that were also like
Values
living our
aligned.
values. Yeah, which at the time we didn't even know what our values were. And actually at the time I was like really averse to wanting to even have company values. But anyway, throughout this whole process, we got from me not wanting to have any company values, now totally being into it, having all the values, and our team, we do tons of work on that topic. So I don't know. Do you want to like tell
Yeah.
part of the story of that?
Yeah, so it was really interesting. So it was funny because values are things that you're operating like you and Rob were already making decisions based on values
We just didn't
before,
know. Yeah.
but they weren't named. And
Yeah.
so what I love about values is like you mentioned the concept of excavation, they exist already. So little nugget for those in the audience, if you the last time you were super super mad or super joyous, you've had a value that was violated
Uh-huh.
or a value that was honored.
Yeah.
And so for those of you, like I actually have a therapist background. I spent my 20s in Silicon Valley. So I worked at a lot of places where there was a lot of values that were violated. And so, moving through organizations and just seeing poor behavior
Yeah.
along the way. So if you own a company, if you work at a company, think about, the behaviors that are rewarded and think about the behaviors that aren't, because
Yeah.
that's a really important concept to think about.
I mean, that's been super important to me because there's times when Linny's been with me and we'll be doing stuff for work and I'll have some like more intense reaction to something that's
Yeah.
going on at work. And for me, it's like in my heart, I know that's because whatever's happening is, triggering something in me, right? But for it to be explained that there's a values violation going
It's
on.
okay.
Right,
It's
and,
okay
like,
to be mad.
that's what's making me trigger it's like, that's so helpful, that has
Right.
been so helpful to me because, like, if you're at work and you're especially if you're running an organization and you have, like, something that really pisses you off and you kinda have, like, a blow up, like, "What the heck?" Blah, 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 and then I mean, I always feel guilty after that kind of like, "Oh, god, I shouldn't have handled it that way," and then the way my brain works, I'm like, "Why did I do that?"
Sure.
And usually I would never know. I would try to figure it out, but I wouldn't really be able to get to the bottom of it. But learning about like, oh, okay, there's the concept of that is probably because of a values violation. And then being able to think back about like, what is the value that this situation violated for me? And how can I help explain that to the person I was dealing with so they don't have to engage like that with me again? And I mean, that's been huge. And also for me to learn like just how to operate within my values with my team on an ongoing basis. I mean, I think I used to be a lot more explosive at work. And that's not to say I'm some like freak running around yelling at people, but I used to have a lot more explosive situations. And I feel like now it's calmed a lot. And a lot of that has to do with the coaching and the help that Tandemly and Linny and Hart have done with us so that we can understand our values. We can understand how they affect us all every day. It's been huge.
I'm so glad to hear
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's been
Well, it's
awesome.
funny. Our feelings are an internal map of our internal world.
Yeah.
And so, like, they're there to let us know when things aren't right.
Yeah.
And so, one thing with company values that I think is really cool is like, you can't have oppositional values to your companies, but they can't, like, you want them to kind of be in flow.
Yeah.
And so, I think, that's something that I've really seen your growth in that specifically. Like, and I think part of that's the Enneagram too,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
where you've sort of realized, like, okay, we are all wired differently. We all
Yeah.
have different personalities. We have different ways in which our brains fire, and
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah. So the Enneagram has been massively huge. That's another thing. Like anytime I'm on a podcast or I'm talking to people at conferences, which we're all about to have happen soon with the RMA International. And anytime I'm doing that, I feel like I'm always talking about therapy,
Yeah.
about books, about our consultants, and about the Enneagram. Which is funny because like we're in hospitality and I'm talking about all these other things that don't seem related, but I think are very related. So the Enneagram has been massive for myself, for me and my husband and our relationship, and for my team. and for our company culture overall. So we have everyone on our team, anyone that joins the company, they take the Enneagram, and they are allowed to have their partner or spouse take it, and we pay for it for them to take it. And like at this point, I have had like all of my family, I mean, my sisters, my parents, my sister's spouses, like, I mean, a lot of people have taken the Enneagram in my life. I meet people at conferences or like I meet new friends. I literally will have Linny and Hart
Yeah.
send them, like, I will pay for them to send the Enneagram test to like so many people that I meet. There's a number of people in the vacation rental industry who have taken the Enneagram because I had Linny and Hart send it to them.
I feel like I've done 5 debriefs,
Right?
like the Alex, both Alex and Annie,
Yeah.
and like, Heather Bear and
Yes.
this, the folks in Alabama who are
Yes.
great,
And
Ginger and
yeah.
Hunter.
And
Yeah.
it's like, I meet people and then I tell them about the Enneagram and then I'm like, "Okay, you have to take it. I'm gonna have someone send you," because people will take it online. It's not the same. So anyway, let's
Yeah, it's
talk
not
about
accurate. Don't
Enneagram,
take it online.
right?
It's
Yeah.
about 60% accurate, and it's actually only accurate for the 3s and 8s. And so,
Oh,
Rachel, yeah, the 3s and 8s, they can kind of pick it up,
okay.
but we use a version out of South Africa called the IEQ9. It was developed by a 5, which
Oh,
is a
interesting.
really good thing if you
Uh-huh.
know the Enneagram. Deep thinkers, slow deep thinkers, very thoughtful and methodical. Um, and so, Hart had been studying this for about 20 years. So her and Dave are like USC, they did a UCLA extension course, and it was never corporate enough. Like it was
Right.
always this kind of woo woo therapy.
Hart told me that the Enneagram was started like when Christianity was
Yep.
created or something, right?
Couple
Like
thousand years
very
ago.
old.
It's
Okay.
very, very
That's
old.
crazy to me.
It's really old.
Yeah.
They knew something, and then it had a resurgence in the 70s. So a bunch
Huh.
of psychologists went to like coastal California. Really, they would spend a week with you. They would sit you down. They would
Gosh.
bring all of your, thoughts to light, and then they would type you and like you are an 8 or you are a
Oh,
7. So it was
okay.
this whole big thing. It's
Okay.
crazy.
Interesting. So yeah, what happened was when we first started talking with Linny and Hart, they suggested that we do the Enneagram. Rob, my husband, and I, because again, Rob and I, started our company Abode Luxury Rentals together. We still own it and run it together. And so when they first started working with us, they were like, "Okay, why don't you both take the Enneagram?" So my husband Rob is a 9 and I'm an 8, which I'm going to let Linny speak to what that means.
Sure.
But once we did some sessions of coaching with Linny and Hart regarding our Enneagram results, it was again so eye-opening for me because there were so many the way that the Enneagram helps you to understand how you interact with other people was huge for me just within my marriage. And so once I had this big eye-opening moment and it was so helpful that I knew like immediately, okay, the whole team has to take this
Yeah.
test. And I remember at the time we were kind of like, it's a lot of money. Like, should we really? But anyway, we did it.
Yeah.
And then we thought maybe like people on the team wouldn't really care. They wouldn't do anything with the information that they got. But we were wrong, or I was at least. It was probably me that thought that. Um, and our team has really run with it.
Yeah.
They mostly all are really into their Enneagram numbers. They've really learned, and we've done a lot of like,
We've done a lot of sessions and
Yeah.
workshops explaining it and
Yeah.
kind of teaching people because it's an intrapersonal measure. So, like, who am I?
Uh-huh.
Interpersonal. So, like, who are we as sort of a unit, a duo, and then a systemic team
Yeah.
measure. So it's funny that you and Rob, like you being an 8, Rob being a 9, you have a 7 team.
Yeah,
So
which is
team styled,
crazy.
which is
Yeah.
crazy,
The
but
majority of our team is 7,
yeah,
which is so interesting. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't even think that
Mhm.
from the results we would find out that like the majority of people are one number or another. There's 9 Enneagram numbers. You can have a 1 through a 9.
Yep.
So in my head, I just figured like, oh, it's probably evenly spread. Like, oh, definitely not. Like, I forget. I don't know if you know off the top of your head
Yeah.
how many people are 7s, but it's like
It's in
more
the
than 2/3.
well,
right?
should I maybe explain, like, kind of orient
Yes,
for
please.
okay, so
Yeah.
for listeners who have never heard of this, so there's 9 numbers. Rachel's, introduced that. There's a way in which we think, feel, and act.
Okay, yeah.
So those of you who've ever done CBT therapy, it's actually aligns really nicely. That's how I was trained psychodynamically and with CBT. But the 8, 9, and 1 is all about action style. So the world is kind of coming at you, and as a result, 8s sort of press back, active
Uh-huh.
controller. 9s sort of waffle between what should I do, what should you do, and like they really want to keep the peace as the adaptive peacemaker. And then the 1 is going to do it internally perfectly. So they're very focused on like
Yeah.
the perfect solution and closing the gap between what is and what could be.
Okay.
So that's all about action, and it's really around control.
Yeah.
So then you have like your 2, 3, 4, which is feeling connected to our heart.
Okay, right.
2 is like really the considerate helper, who are folks that are picking up on other people's feelings.
Yeah.
Fours are very focused on their own feelings.
Okay, yeah.
Active, the creative, the intense creative, and they're very good at like noticing and holding space for their own feelings.
Okay.
Whereas the three, the competitive achiever, they're sort of going, "How do I feel? How do you feel? How do I feel? How do you feel? I don't know. I need to achieve. I need to be the best." And
Yeah.
so, they have these kind of contra numbers. And that's related to heart and acceptance. So twos, threes, and fours. Twos really want to feel accepted. Threes definitely want to feel accepted. Fours are more about self acceptance.
Okay.
And then lastly, the last quadrant is the thinking, 5, 6, 7, and that's related to fear. For sevens, our seven friends, it's
Uh-huh.
external, enthusiastic, visionary, and that's really kind of fear of missing out.
Mhm.
And so
The
they're,
FOMO 7. So we have a
FOMO
FOMO
7,
7 team. Yeah.
FOMO 17. But think about it. You run a vacation rental
Yeah.
company
It's perfect.
and people here want to play, they want to ski, they want to enjoy.
Yeah.
So sevens are the fastest thinking type, but also kind of can be a little bit like squirrel. Then
And you would think I was a 7 because
but
I'm
you
so
have
squirrely.
well, you have a six thinking style, but you do have a lot of seven.
Okay.
And then six is actually the in between. So that's the loyal skeptic. So sixes are always thinking about what could go wrong.
Uh-huh.
And that's what I think makes you so good at business because you're thinking like, where can we run out of money? Where's the legislation
Totally.
going?
Yeah.
I've seen you really like dig into that.
Mhm.
That's essential in business. And so sixes have that kind of energy, skeptical energy. And then fives, we talked about it, the inventor of this IEQ9 is a five, and those
Okay,
are
yeah.
the quiet specialists. So
Okay.
very thinking very slowly, very deeply. But they're when they say they know something, they really know.
I feel like we only have 2 5s, right?
You have a couple fives, you have probably, 50 people, you have in the 20s of
Okay.
sevens. Yeah.
Because I feel like some of the things, like little nuggets I've learned about Enneagram is like 5s intrigue me because it seems like
Mhm.
we haven't had that many, and they're like the testers, right? They're always testing things. Is that right? Like they're
Well,
like the librarian. Like, is that right?
so think about the guy who invented the IEQ9.
Yeah.
So he's going to go crazy deep and narrow on his research.
Uh-huh.
So anyone, and I'm not stereotyping the thing. I think one of the things we say with the Enneagram is this is not to be weaponized. Like we're
Right.
not going to go, well, you're an 8 and I'm a 7. That's like a real 7 thing to do.
Yeah.
Fives are very focused on the data. And so generally speaking, like people who get a PhD in anthropological studies of like Native American culture, that's probably a 5
Yeah.
person.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I just remember learning Tony Hsieh, the guy who started Zappos, who is like a very intriguing person to me, and he wrote Delivering Happiness, which was a book that was really impactful for me. He ended up being a client of ours, and then, he ended up passing away early, and it was like really sad. So that just the story of his life and him is something that's impactful for me. And so then when I learned that he is an Enneagram 5, I found that to be, like, so interesting because he was such an interesting thinker, and there's a couple people on our team who are very interesting thinkers who are 5s.
Yep.
So, like, that intrigues me. And then another nugget about the Enneagram for me is that when I found out that my husband, Rob, is a 9, which means he's more of, like, the passive peacekeeper,
absolutely.
and I'm an 8, which is considered the active controller, which believe me, when I took the test and I got the results and I saw active controller, I was not like, "Oh, yay, that sounds great. I'm so proud to be the active controller." I was like, "Excuse me?" But anyway, so the active controller and the passive one, like that sounds like maybe a good yin and the yang, but also like not maybe the best couple. And so I definitely had some reservations about like what this would mean for us. But one of the things that Linny and Hart taught us, right, when we were learning about the Enneagram was that, and this is like an example of one of the cool things about Enneagram. So from looking at the details about a 9 and the details about an 8, they were able to explain to me like when an 8 and a 9 have a conversation, it's common that the 8 would leave the conversation and feel like that's the best
We resolved
conversation
everything.
that like, "Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, thank you for
Yeah.
that talk. I feel so good. We resolved so many things." And in the same conversation, the 9 is gonna leave and feel like they just got beat up. And I was experiencing that with my husband, like, where we would have these conversations, and I would be like, "Oh my god, that was amazing. Thank you for
Yeah.
that." And I could tell that he was kind of like after. And so Linny and Hart, without even knowing that, were able to talk to my husband and I and explain this dynamic with 8s and 9s. And it was huge. And it's really helped the way that I interact with my husband and the way
And your
that
team.
yeah, and my team. Well, and then once we did the work with my husband and I, and then like I said, we expanded and did more Enneagram work with the whole team, then that's been like amazing. In fact, I don't think I even told you this, but I was talking to some of the people on our team recently because we were looking at setting up our gifts for homeowners for the winter because we always send out like a gift every year. And I was asking people on the team if they thought that it would be weird if we gifted the Enneagram to all of our homeowners, like for them to take the Enneagram.
So, and I for people who are listening, my husband in sort of the tradition of Rachel Robb started a vacation rental management company. So like we can't get away from it.
Yeah.
But we have actually talked about using the Enneagram as an onboarding tool
Yeah.
for homeowners so that we can relate to them better.
Totally. I was thinking like, how cool would it be if we sent out a gift with like a QR code or whatever, a link so that people could go online if they wanted
I think
to
that's a great idea.
and take the Enneagram. And then we would, we could let them like explain to them how this is a tool that we can use to communicate more effectively with them. And so I don't know. I'm still waffling on it
Yeah.
because I'm like, our homeowner is going to think we've just like totally lost our mind and we're crazy that we're having them take a personality assessment. But
I think you could give it as like a opt-in.
yeah,
Like I think opt-in is always a great way.
I just think it would be so cool. Anyway, so I'm clearly so bought in on the Enneagram. So that was just me giving a couple nuggets, I feel like, of examples of how the Enneagram has helped our team. But I don't know if you want to go like a little deeper on some more about Enneagram, that like things that people could use with their own team,
Yeah.
or maybe even once they learn about themselves, things they could use with their clients or.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I feel like we've used the Enneagram for so many things. So we've talked about like, hospitality and this
Uh-huh.
idea of hospitality and connection. Like
Yeah.
meeting someone where they're at is like the ultimate form of connection, is
Yeah.
understanding who and what they are.
Totally.
But what's really funny is, I came here to Park City yesterday to launch Abode's first review cycle.
Yes.
Just super exciting.
Yes.
We've kind of at Tandemly helped systematize some of these like light
Yes.
HR functions
Yes.
and made them feel like Abode. Like we're
Totally.
not coming in here and trying to make it feel
Yeah.
like a Coca-Cola or IBM
Right.
or
I'm so
some-
averse to like corporate style company culture things
Mhm.
because I did work with bigger corporations before we started this company. And so I've been fighting reviews. We do one
for
on
3 years. We
Yeah.
got her though. We got
Yeah.
her.
But now we finally
Yeah.
officially have started a review process, which I think is going to be huge. And our team really
Yeah.
wants it. It's just, I've always wanted to stay away from like too many standardized anything because I wanted everything to feel and to be like really authentic. And I wanted real relationships, which is what I felt was missing with corporate stuff. But I think with Linny and Hart's help, like we are able to do a review process that's
It's
real.
going to be really good. And I
Yeah.
think using the Enneagram to think about this, I mentioned we have thinking, feeling, and action styles.
Yeah.
When there's a manager, one of the other things we helped Rachel and Rob with too was create this org design, this org structure.
Yeah.
Which, because before, I mean, I think you and Rob had like 15 or 20 direct reports,
Mhm.
which is just too many. When the organization is really flat,
Mhm.
I think holacracy is an interesting concept,
Mhm.
and you can't
Which
make
is
decisions.
a Tony Hsieh thing.
Tony Hsieh thing,
And I
totally.
looked into it. Yeah.
But-
Google holacracy for sure.
Very
Yeah.
cool little nugget. But you can't make decisions quickly.
Mhm.
And then there's bottlenecks throughout it.
Yeah.
So when we do this performance review, and for Abode, they have specifically, we helped create a director layers. We had like promotions, really great,
Yeah.
amazing directors here.
Totally.
So proud of them. We got a manager layer, and then we've got like an IC, individual contributor layer. We will be able to tell where there's tension on the team.
Yeah.
Because here's what happens, right? Like you have an issue. People don't quit jobs, they quit managers.
Mhm.
And like Abode has amazing retention. Like this is one of
Yes.
the things they're really proud of. And part of it is like the values and the culture and treating employees amazingly. And there's going to be tension when someone's tri-type. So I mentioned, thinking, feeling, and action.
Yeah.
If someone has like a 2, 6, 1 tri-type and they're working with someone who's like a 3, 7, 8,
Yeah.
there's going to be tension in that relationship.
Mhm.
We can normalize that.
Yeah.
And also give them tools to work together.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really interesting as we roll out this review process.
Yeah.
Looking at the tri-types, looking at the managers, and seeing what
Totally.
happens.
Yeah. We did a meeting with the team yesterday.
It was yesterday.
And we talked about all the reviews and the process. But we did talk about Enneagram too. And like another example for me within our team for the Enneagram that's been really helpful is like there's a few people on the team that are 2s, but I'm thinking of someone specific that's a 2 and he takes on, like, he'll never say no. And
It's hard for 2s to say
yeah.
no.
And so he'll just always do more, more, more. And so then he'll get burned out. And I wasn't really understanding before the whole Enneagram thing. I wasn't really getting why that was happening. Because it was like, well, he says yes. But then understanding a 2 more means that, like, I don't know. Do you want to explain the background of a 2?
Yeah. So
Okay.
consider helper. So psychodynamic therapist. Sorry, I'm going to get dorky for a sec. Your childhood influences your personality. So at age 5 or 6, like your tri-type and your type is formed.
Okay.
And so for a 2, they lived in a house where it was rewarded to be helpful. So they saw their own self-value in their family of
Mhm.
serving other people.
Yeah.
And so, for 2s, their parents might have been other types. So they kind of came in, they were saying yes, they made the
Yeah.
people feel really good about themselves.
Yeah.
And so for 2s, it's really hard for them to say no because they feel like their self-worth is in their service to others.
Okay, right. So, like, learning all of that and sort of absorbing it and understanding it made me realize, okay, for this guy that we have on the team that's so diligent and such a hard worker, but because he's a 2, we can't just keep going to him just because he says yes. Like, we have to moderate what a level of work that we're gonna give to him because he'll never stop. Like, he's gonna always say yes, but then he'll burn out and
Mhm.
that'll be negative. And so in order to help protect him from the burnout, we need to really be careful on what we hand over to him. And see, the Enneagram was like, for
Yeah.
me, what allowed me to understand that. And I knew all these like surrounding things about how he never said no, but he would get burned out. But I couldn't figure out like what to do next. And it
Mhm.
was the information from
Yeah.
the Enneagram that was like, oh, that was that moment where it all like, crystallized. And I knew like, okay, so the next thing that we need to do is like talk to the team, communicate about, really taking accounting of what we're handing over to our 2s and making sure we're helping them to not take on too much.
Well, and empowering that. It's funny. I know exactly what you're talking about. I
Yeah.
talked to him for about an hour yesterday. The other couple other things that we do with Abode is we'll do a reputation audit
Mhm.
for leaders that are kind of progressing through the
Yeah.
company because your reputation isn't necessarily who you are, but it's how you're known.
Yeah,
And so
which
you can
it's so
actually,
helpful.
it's so helpful. So,
Yeah.
like, a lot of people don't know their impact. And so gathering that data.
Yeah.
So I was talking to him about a rep audit I'm running right now. And we talked a long time about boundaries. And
Mhm.
so what's so cool about him knowing he's a 2 is he's
Yeah.
he's like now going, yeah, I have to say no. Like
Mhm.
I can't, like I
Right.
just talked to him this morning. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to go to Moab this weekend because I have to go to Sun Valley
Yeah.
on Monday next week to go with Rachel and Robin. Like I need the rest.
Yeah.
And so like that for me, and we have these lines, there's so much in the Enneagram, but for a 2 to go to their 8,
Yeah.
which is the line for the 2,
Mhm.
that's saying no.
Yeah.
And so when healthy, 2s look like the healthy versions of the 8.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Very cool.
and I know that, like, we're kind of getting off
Inside
into
baseball.
numbers
Yeah.
and it's, like, confusing, but I think I don't know. I am, like, now in the religion of Enneagram for sure, which it's not actually a religion, okay? But, like,
It
I'm
could
kind of
be.
making it one because it's, like, I'm just so bought into it,
Yeah.
and it's funny because I was so anti-personality tests. Like,
Mhm.
my whole life, I have been like, I hate when people are like, "I'm an INJ7," or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm like, "What the fuck does that mean?" And or, like, the one where, like,
Culture
yes,
index.
which
Yeah.
I know a lot of people, especially in our industry, love
Mhm.
culture index and predictive
Predictive
index.
index for hiring.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
even those, I'm not gonna hate on them too much, but, like, it'll be like, "You're a maverick," or whatever, and I'm like me and, like, a bunch of other people, and, like, what? I don't know why it
Well, what does
matters.
that mean? So that's
Right.
another issue. So Hart and we're certified in like 7 or 8, like Myers-Briggs, Hogan. I'm with I think I've run a couple
Uh-huh.
Harrisons with you
Yeah.
guys. That's behavioral. These are all really good. But what I love about the Enneagram is it's both like shallow, like you can
Mhm.
quickly understand what an 8
Yeah.
is, but it also is really deep.
Yeah.
We have tri-types, we have integration, we have
Yeah.
wings, we have lines. So not necessarily good for hiring. We wouldn't recommend it for hiring. And I
Yeah.
know a lot of people in the industry use predictive index for
Yes,
hiring,
yes.
which I
Yeah,
think can be effective.
we don't do Enneagram
Yeah.
before we hire someone, like, this is something we do after.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
so
I
yeah.
think it's now illegal, like
Is it?
to do
Okay.
person. Like there was a time where you could
I think I remember
kind of,
interviewing
yeah,
sometimes with personality tests
and now I
beforehand.
can't do it because it's,
Huh.
mhm,
Okay,
it's an
interesting.
HR no.
But I do think that Enneagram has been so, so helpful, and, like, I'm not trying to form a cult or get a bunch of people to join my religion, but I am saying you should think about the Enneagram for your team if you haven't, or for yourself at least. Um, and, like, obviously, I'm not just saying, like, everyone has to call Linny, although you should. But, I just feel like I don't know, I feel like it's also kind of a trend in our industry right now because, I am hearing more and more people, not just us, but, like, other people from
Yeah.
other companies or other, vendors or, like, on podcasts and things like that, talking about the Enneagram more and more, and so to me, it's like, now's the best time to jump on the bandwagon, but, that's just me. Um, so yeah, okay, we've talked about Enneagram,
Yep.
we've talked about company culture. Are there any other nuggets?
Mhm.
Because that is, like, our thing on the podcast is trying to offer, like, what we call the nuggets and the secret
Mhm.
sauce of, like, just some good details of like things that people can do. And when it comes to Tandemly, it would be
Yeah.
probably like company culture type stuff.
Sure.
Like real tactical things that people can take from our episodes and like actually use that minute and maybe not even have to think about it too hard, but just so obviously one is the Enneagram.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think another is like really taking time with your company values, which I think that's a really hard thing to get into if you're not normalized to it.
Yeah, the values are funny because, you don't necessarily have to hire us, although we love, meeting new people, but you're probably going to have to hire somebody
Uh-huh.
externally
Totally.
because the values are so close to you, you actually can't tease them out.
Yeah.
So think about that. Another nugget I would say is get in the culture of feedback. So whether it's,
Mhm.
we do engagement surveys with Abode twice a year,
Yeah.
run your own engagement survey, right?
Yeah.
Get some time, put it in a Google form if you're cost conscious. There's a
Yeah.
great software out there.
What's the one we use?
We use 15.5.
15.5. Yeah,
We really like
15.5.
15.5.
Yeah.
It's a performance management software. Lattice is great too.
Okay.
It just depends on what you want to invest in. But take a moment and really get to know what's going on for your people.
Yeah.
The only issue is like if you're running that, you might need to do that externally too, because when you run engagement surveys internally, people
Mhm.
aren't honest.
Right.
Like they know if somebody internally is going to
That's
see
true.
it.
Yeah.
But there's ways in which you can do it.
Yeah.
I also think like this idea that we're a feedback rich culture is really key.
Yeah.
So let's, have hard conversations.
Mhm.
Let's get our Brene Brown
Even
going.
for small businesses, because I
Yeah.
think like, with my husband and I, we started with just a couple employees, but then, everyone's reporting to us, like Linny was saying earlier. And that does create, as we grew up to 10 people, 15 people, 20, 30, it does create like a hard situation for people to give you good feedback because they know that like this is our company, this is our life, this is our baby. So of course they're not going to want to say anything negative, but we kind of want to hear something negative, even when it's
Yeah.
difficult. And I do think when Linny and Hart came in and that's one of the first things we started
I
on.
think we did some trainings. We
Uh-huh.
did the engagement survey
And we did the
and
engagement
Enneagram.
surveys and they ran the engagement survey. So it was coming from them. And we got really good feedback, like good and bad, but we got a lot of solid feedback that was helpful. And even from that first engagement survey all the way to now, when we've done
Like
11.
11. Yeah, we've done 11. Yeah.
We were just talking with the team yesterday about this, and I was asking them like, "Hey, do you guys feel like we've taken your feedback and done something with it?" And they all say yes. Like, so, and I was like, "No, don't tell me yes if you don't mean it, like for real."
That's the nugget I will say.
Yeah.
If you ask people for feedback, you better be actionable with it.
Yeah.
Like don't ask someone for feedback and do nothing.
Yeah.
Even if it's one small thing,
Right.
you better do it.
Like everything that everyone says, we don't act on all of it,
Sure.
but we do try to look at number one, the trends. Like what,
Mhm.
like one time I remember, because this was more recently, the trend was like people wanted more PTO, right? They
Yeah.
wanted more paid time off. And so then we were like, we feel like we're giving a ton of PTO, but okay, this is what everyone wants. So let's like look at what our situation is and how can we offer more PTO? And so I think that was really helpful. And I think we also do take sometimes like one person will have a comment and we will take that comment and then do something about it. And we
Absolutely.
can't do it for every single one-off comment, but we try to like
Remember the salary comment we had maybe a couple
Uh-huh.
years ago?
Yes.
And so then we created salary bands.
Yes.
And like not like the formal icky, like
Yeah.
you're an IC4 and you
Yeah.
can only extend like, no, we're not doing that. But we also created a process for
Mhm.
people to kind of advocate for
Yes.
what they
Or like
made or
within our operations department, we had found that people wanted more clarity of like the layers, like the different
Mhm.
levels in the operations department. So we like worked on something like that. And even though I am averse to those concepts,
You're doing so good. You're
thank
leaning
you.
into all of them.
We've done like
Yeah.
because people had asked for it. I mean, really reviews.
Yeah, the reviews
Like,
are I think your big one that
People have
wanna
always
do.
wanted reviews, but I've always been so anti because I did work for Coca-Cola. I worked for an agency, a marketing agency of McDonald's. I worked in these corporate environments. We had reviews, we had salary bands, we had the star method or whatever, and I freaking hated it so much.
not
And I
good.
found it like not effective, not helpful, and just very annoying and stressful. So I've always wanted to avoid that. But I feel like the way that Linny and Hart, that you guys have helped us to create those kind of processes, it's still like in the abode vibe, but it's giving people on our team that have been at like they're saying, I want reviews. So it's like, who am I to say we don't want to do that? Like that's what people want. We should be doing it. And now we are. So,
Yeah. Well, one of our core values at Tandemly is flexible flow. So,
okay.
whether we're working with you guys, family office, or, tech company in
Yeah.
San Francisco, we're going to like match what that company needs. And
Yeah.
so what I think is so cool about you all is you really know who you are.
I think.
And I would say
I hope
so.
we do.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, I would say so. And it's been really easy for us to kind of come in and help like amplify that. Cause
Yeah.
like we want you to be you. We don't want you to like, we're never gonna turn you into a Coca-Cola
Right,
because that's
right.
just not who we are or
Yeah.
you are.
Well, and I think as we excavated our company values, and that's really helped us so that we now it's like we can feel it. Like, but not just me and Rob too. It's like everyone on the team now. It's like you can feel like, okay, is this idea, does this go along with like our values, our Abodian way?
It's a decision making tool.
Yeah. Or does it not? And we can sort of sense it now that like, oh, so that when Linny and Hart have come to us and been like, we need a review process, here's how we think you should do it, and it's set up in a way that works with our values and our culture, like, it's like, oh, all of a sudden I can be like, yeah. Oh, yeah, we can totally do that. That will be fine. And so, yeah, hopefully we're gonna do this review process in the next few weeks, and hopefully the team likes it. But in Abode fashion with our resilience, that's one of our company values, I feel like if it doesn't go well, we can always tweak it and keep moving
Absolutely.
forward. So
Yeah, that's
so
what I would
yeah.
say with these processes is like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But like, if you get some momentum with something, double down on it.
Yeah.
So, like the Enneagram, we've had like
Uh-huh.
tons of trainings from that,
Yeah.
whether it's
Years.
homeowner, years. And like,
Yeah.
it's been fun for us. It's been creative for us because we're like, okay, so what does a Abode need? All right, how do we like use adult learning theory to
Mhm.
design the thing that they need? And
Yeah.
so I think, over this course of time, it's just been so fun to work
Yeah.
together.
No, it's been awesome. Yeah. So I feel like we covered a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, just to recap slightly some of our nuggets, we talked about Enneagram, how really, I mean, everyone should take the Enneagram, the good version, not the cheap one online. Or maybe there's one online, but
No,
not the cheap
there's
free
no ones
ones.
online.
Okay. Yeah. So you need a good one because
Yeah.
like the Enneagram test that Linny and Hart do, it like sort of changes as you take it. So it's like
It's
retesting you.
adaptive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
adaptive.
Mhm.
So I feel like that makes a big difference. Okay, but so Enneagram, like Enneagram at least for yourself, if not for you and your partner or your spouse. And then once you feel and you understand how helpful it is, like for your team, if you can, this is a good thing. And I don't know, what were some other nuggets here? Like the idea of company values and like excavating, which this is like the excavating of the values is a Linny and Hart phrase that I am obsessed with. I love it. Once I thought about the idea of like how we had excavated our values, maybe it's because I love fossils and digging for fossils, but um like that really helped explain to me how that worked more than I even understood it while we were doing it. So I think, yeah, Enneagram for you, for your people in your closest to you in your life and your team, excavating company values, like in a really nice, thoughtful way, and not just necessarily sitting down and writing what you think your company values are, but working with your team and probably with a professional to come up with
Yeah.
that. Um, and then I do think, like Linny said, like another nugget is that feedback thing and really understanding that, like, if you're going to take your company and your team from just being a company and a team to having a company culture and having values and being able to have something to make decisions off of every day when, having
When
one of
things get
these
hard,
yeah,
like,
these
that's the
companies
thing.
give a
Yeah.
million decisions, like, all day. And how
And
do we make them?
well, it's like, if do we take this homeowner, right?
Right,
Like,
yes.
do we take this homeowner? Do we hire this person,
Yeah,
right? Deep roots grow is kind
yeah.
of your values, and, like, when people act I mean, for my husband's company, we just fired, husband, wife.
Oh,
It was a
yeah.
whole that whole thing because
Mhm.
they were treating our employees poorly.
Yeah,
Like, they were accusing them.
right,
We're like, "We haven't even onboarded you,
right.
and you're already
And it
accusing us
mhm,
of, like, emptying out your hot tub?" Like, this
right.
is not gonna be a good long-term, equitable
Yeah.
connection.
And it, like, goes against your values
It
and
goes
you can
against our
feel it.
values of who we
Yeah,
are.
and I think we are able as, like, business owners and people to sense that something's going against our values before we even know what our values are, but I think it's so much more arbitrary and you're kind of, like, throwing spaghetti at the wall when you take the time to work with a professional and excavate those company values and really know that you have the right ones, then it's, like, so much more clear. You're not just, like, hoping that it feels right, which I do think that as humans, a lot of us, if we're in tune with ourselves, we can know sometimes when things feel right or wrong. But it's not as you can't do it as confidently or as easily or as
Mhm.
efficiently as after you have worked on your values, written them down, known that, like, these are correct. So I think that's huge. And then the feedback
Yeah.
piece, right?
Just stay open and stay curious because I think one thing I'd love, listeners to take away from is we are all wired very differently. We've all had very different childhoods.
Yeah.
So thinking, feeling, and acting, like, we approach the world very differently as
Yeah.
humans. And so the more we can give grace and space for somebody else to, you know, go out
Yeah.
in the world on the way that in the way that they find authentic, like,
Yeah.
we can also do the same thing, and we can
Yeah.
all coexist. Like, it's okay.
Which to me is what you learn in therapy, which
Yeah.
is, I mean, like, I am so obsessed with therapy, and if you know me, you know this, and if you've ever met me in person, I probably talked to you about therapy because I love therapy, and, we pay for therapy for our team, and that's, like, just such an important part of what our company culture is, and to me, it's like that's the kind of thing that you get from leading a life where you go to therapy or maybe you work with your religious leaders or you do whatever to have introspective thinking in terms of for yourself and for how you interact with other people. That's when you can really realize, like, how important these relationships are and how, all of the everyone's individual things that they have going on in their own life and how that affects them, and it makes living life on this planet, but especially in the industry of vacation rentals,
Yeah.
way easier when you can understand that stuff because I always say the vacation rental industry and working, as a property manager, it's like a study in human psychology,
Oh, absolutely.
right?
It holds
And
up a mirror to who you are.
yeah, and it's also, like, really it can be really rough on a person, to stay sane when you're dealing with so many different personality types and all the things that are driving people behind the scenes that you don't really have anything to do with, but it's affecting your daily life. Um, so I think the more coaching that we've brought into our team, the more consultants, the more therapy, the more great books, the more that we're supporting our team to be able to deal with the pressures of this industry. Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to be whole yourself first before give back to others.
Yeah,
Because so much
everyone
of
says
this
that, but,
yeah.
like, it's true.
But that's the how. I think the nugget in
Yeah,
this is, like, this is the how to make yourself
yeah,
well, because if you're unwell or you're not operating at full capacity,
right.
this industry will wreck you.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the main nugget. All right, so I think we're good. I'm not sure how long we've gone on this episode, but I think it's probably good enough, you guys. So,
Yeah.
thanks if anyone ever listens to this. We hope you do, and, we hope you got something out of it, and we hope you come back for the next episode. And if you wanna reach out to Linny, with Tandemly, what would be the best way for someone to do that?
Yeah, email Linny, Linny, @tandemly.com, or just check out our website, tandemly.com.
Cool. And, otherwise, I think we're gonna, stop it here. We'll see everyone next time, and thanks for coming.